Gentleman calls me Alberta's biggest troublemaker, and I say, cowboy, it takes one to know one. He is part of the original Coots protest crew. He's also a former city councillor from Fort Macleod, Mr. Marco Van Hugenbos. The next gentleman just hit 100,000 followers on X. He is a commentator, he's an engineer, retired now, father of four, an outdoorsman. You might know him as Marty up north, the unacceptable fact checker. I know him as Martin Belanger. Come on up here. The only lady on the panel here is a two-time candidate for the PPC, a registered financial and investment planner, but she's also the founder of the 1905 committee, Ms. Nadine Wellwood. And then, I love this, because we have a current member of the UCP board. He's a businessman, he lives in Calgary, I've met him a couple of times, highly engaged in the political scene, and he is the Calgary director of the United Conservative Party. He's got a big week ahead of him as the AGM comes up, Mr. Peter Wickler. And then the moderator, so I'm not moderating this one, the moderator of this panel is really the force behind, let's keep this event on the rails, let's get it on track. He's been running meetings in the background hard over the last couple of weeks. He's a veteran. He sued the Department of Defense to make sure that the Marines actually don't lose their benefits or don't get kicked out of the military because of them refusing the vaccine. He now works as a political consultant with over 300 Conservative politicians in the UK, Canada, and the US, Mr. Cameron Davis.
All the renegades.
Yeah. Okay, wow. Now I know why they asked the Marine to moderate here. I gotta keep the peace up here. All right. Well, we've got some quick questions. All five of these individuals are extraordinarily active in ensuring that your voices are heard and ensuring that government tyranny doesn't get out of hand, and that we stand up and we make sure that they know exactly how we feel about it and we do something about it. So I want to thank the five up here for doing that and all of their participation in making sure the grassroots voices across Alberta are heard. My first question is going to go to Peter. Peter, as a member of the UCP executive, you have a unique vantage point within the organization. If you had the opportunity to implement 3 key changes that could strengthen the party today, what would they be?
Just 3.
We'll come back to if we have more time. 3 for now.
At any rate, yeah, I thought about this, and being a regional director, you're involved with a bunch of CAs. And what I've seen when we first had our campaign for the re-election, I saw engagement with MLAs, with the CAs, and it looked like we were a happy family. But since then, what I've seen is a lot of disappointment. And I'd like to see some changes where MLAs actually really engage with CAs, and especially with the orphan ones. Recently, an event was planned in one of the CAs, and literally less than 2 weeks before the event was to happen, it was an orphan CA. The EA for the MLA minister phoned and said, well, we won't be able to make it now. So they had to cancel the event. You know, those things happen. You know, ministers especially are especially busy. But I was surprised by the response which I've seen when the EA offered, you know, MLAs really don't like to deal with CAs. Really? Yeah, yeah, and that's not a surprise, but it happens. They get They move up there, and this isn't typical of all MLAs, as you all know, but I'm surprised that still continues. And that disengagement, that's disappointing. Now, a second thing that is near and dear to me as an Albertan is what's been repeated over and over here is this thing called fiscal responsibility. Since the beginning, I didn't understand why we have a new government, but we have more ministers than ever. And we have a bigger budget than ever. I don't understand that. You've heard Dr. Mackes talk about that report on AHS. Maybe if we just addressed that and got rid of 2,000 excess managers, there could be a big change. That's right. And I heard a good suggestion, and I won't direct it where I got it from, but you know, we don't seem to have that impetus to do it, and we don't know how to get it done, but you might remember there was a guy in the States that we all hear about who took over Twitter and got rid of 80% of the staff over
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I kind of think if we said, here's a report from E&Y, AHS, do you think you could come up for a bit? What do you think? So then the other thing, and you've heard this over and over, what I've witnessed and what's really been disappointing is this thing called political will. And where it's been disappointing for me is because I'm here because of what I believe a lot of us are here for is this so-called mRNA process. I don't understand why we can't stand up and do something. It's brought up over and over, you've heard the responses. It doesn't make any sense. We know the evidence is there. It is a kill shot. I don't understand.
Absolutely.
It takes political will. And I think if we had the political will, we'd garner more support throughout the province.
That's your three leader.
Now, the other thing that
You got more?
is, I've got, well, the political will, I got three things. I gotta get them. And I'm gonna bring this up, and this is one that is really upsetting to me. We've heard the things that were an issue in Chestermere. We heard issues that happened in Cochrane, which really, really bothered me. And they're directed at a Minister of Urban Affairs. And for some reason, this government wants to protect this individual. I'm not asking much. I just like that investigated. The other thing that's been really disappointing to me is that we all know, and it was in the press recently, and I don't know where it was, but somebody, it looks like committed murder. They're out in 2 days on bail. But we've had people down in Coutts for 2 years. I think in that 2 years, we could have done something. And
Yeah, where's the justice?
I think it's all underlined in letters, political will.
Well, we've heard a lot about political will tonight, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask each of you some specific questions on that. I'm going to start with Nadine, because I think you've been running around and asking tough questions, and I don't know, are you supported by the WEF? You want to get that one?
I'm most definitely WEF. Although I have to say, Peter, you're probably going to be more unpopular tomorrow with UCP than me.
So Nadine, my real question to you though is you've been very vocal about your views on Danielle Smith's leadership in particular, and some have speculated for several months now that you may want to see her removed as premier. How do you respond to that perception?
Well, first and foremost, 1905 committee has never advocated for the removal of the premier. There's an awful lot of talk about accountability. Unfortunately, we just weren't seeing a lot of action being taken. And so the 1905 thought that, you know, if you're going to make a promise, then you should keep a promise. And that's what we've been pushing forward. Like, you know, Mr. Drew Barnes, Mr. Art Hanger, Dr. Mackes, you know, talked about, said, you need some courage in the political class. I wasn't seeing any courage in the political class. And one thing that I've learned in politics in my short little foray, has been politicians only respond to public pressure. Asking nicely with a pretty please does not work. So I'm going to ask each and every one of the people who are attending the AGM, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. That is none of my business. Although there are groups out there, the cheerleading Danielle Smith squad, that are telling people how to vote. I've never done that. We've never done that. I think that's an insult to you. And here's the thing, vote your conscience. If you believe she's doing a good job, vote yes. If you believe she's doing a poor job, vote no. Unfortunately, that's their rules. There's no sliding scale here. It's either a yes or a no. So here's the thing though, I see a lot of fear. A lot of people come at this from a place of fear. Comments like, there is no one else. Do you honestly believe there is no one else? Heaven forbid that something should happen to Danielle Smith tomorrow. There's no one else who can lead this province. That's the wrong way to approach things. We have to vote, demand what we want, right? That's the only way we get what we want. So our goal is to hold Premier Smith accountable to the true conservative values, the true conservative principles, that she was actually elected and has a very strong mandate to do, and just is failing to do so. And we've spoken out in those areas where we feel that she's demonstrated poor judgment and or needs a course correction. Our role is to provide the critical oversight, I think, to somewhat Peter's point, the inner circle should be providing, instead of just simply patting her on the back and telling her what a good job she's doing. And I would have to say that with nearly 6,000 people attending this AGM, the 1905 has had some success, I think, at engaging the citizens of this province and bringing forth and foremost the issues that are important to them.
Thank you. I can tell you've run a couple times. You're not afraid of that microphone. So my next question is going to be to Marty. It's not because you're next in the line. It's just I think this is a great follow-up. So to Nadine's point, Marty, you voiced concerns about Albertans placing too much faith in one individual leader. And if I recall, having been involved in the unification of the Wild Rose and PC parties to form the United Conservative Party, there was a sense that Jason Kenney was going to come back and solve Alberta's problems and rescue us from the NDP. That was a generalized sentiment at that point in time. And you voiced concerns that Albertans place too much faith in one individual leader. What do you believe is the best approach to ensuring both strong leadership and a balanced and resilient government?
Yeah, well, it's doing this. Actually, let me tell you a quick story. So, you know, Tariq pointed out, online I'm known as Marty Up North, unacceptable fact checker. So, unacceptable is because of the last 4 years. You know, people are trying to silence me and people like us, and they use all sorts of labels, so we make fun of them, and I call myself unacceptable. Fact checker is actually what I do every day. I'm an engineer by training. I learned a long time ago, you know, question everything. And so, and lately, you're right, I've been, I'll get to your question, but I've been critical of Danielle. And it's cost me online. It's really, you know, I believe, like Nadine, like everybody here, that we need to elect people and we need to hold them accountable. They need to do what they're telling us they're going to do or what we're asking them to do. And, you know, everybody knows me as holding the Liberals accountable because I'm right-leaning. Sure, but do you think that because somebody's political stripes are different than the Liberals that I'm not going to hold them accountable? No, I'm going to continue to hold them accountable. And I'm telling you right now, that's difficult. I'm surprised at how difficult that is, at the amount of pushback I'm getting from my followers.
If you ask questions, you must vote for Nenshi then.
Yeah, no, look, I hear that all the time. So, like, my followers,
How dare you ask a question?
Absolutely. My followers, I'm losing followers, and people will say to me like weird things like, I agree with you on 99% of the stuff you talk about, but your stance against Danielle, that's where I draw the line. And then they'll block me or unfollow me, and I'm like, that's insane. And so, you know, back to your original question, that's how we get good leaders. I gotta hold them accountable. I gotta question. Actually, I come from the private sector. I mean, one thing I don't like about politics is that politics is a popularity contest. I wish that, you know, there was an opportunity. Well, we actually have that opportunity, but every politician should have that recall fear, right? Like, perform, do, if you tell us you're gonna be technical and competent, then do it, and if you don't, then face the wrath of being recalled. Yeah, merit-based, absolutely. I could go on, but let's
Thank you. Marco, you're pretty vocal about a lot of things. Some people don't like you too much, but that's why I brought you up here to keep you guys from tackling each other. Marco, you've been open about your decision not to support Smith in the upcoming leadership review vote. Now, I'm very curious, given your previous strong support for her campaign, what factors have led to that shift in your opinion? And now, just for the audience, this is an accountability panel. We're asking tough questions. We're not here to cheerlead, and some may, I'm not telling you what to say, but I'm curious what led to that shift, because at one point in time, I think everybody on the stage either campaigned for or supported in some way, shape, or form both Jason Kenney and Danielle Smith, and our opinions have shifted potentially, and I'm curious to know why.
Yeah, so I was one of those people that really got on the Smith train, and not necessarily the individual. I got behind truth. I got behind the campaign that was going to deliver transparency, the campaign that was going to talk about the facts of the last couple of years, the campaign that was going to address the biggest hurt, pain, confusion, and government overreach that Albertans had ever dealt with in generations, or ever, period. I got behind a campaign that was focused on accountability, promises of a full review into the Alberta government's handling of the COVID pandemic. That's the campaign I got behind. That's the person, and the person who made those promises, and the team that made that promises was the Smith team. I remember clearly the Travis Toews campaign being reluctant to say they would never lock down Albertans again. That was one of the key things that I jumped ship. I was initially supporting the Travis Toews campaign. In the beginning, I thought, you know, he's saying all the right things, but very quickly I realized that there was too big of a connection to the current, or the outgoing administration, and a failure to communicate to Albertans what we were looking to hear. The Albertans that had been hurt, that had been confused for years now in relation to inconsistent emergency measures, and all the pain and suffering, etc. So that's the train that I jumped on board. That's the Smith train. It would have led to, her campaign would have led to a Rolf Klein style government that we've seen in the past decade. Unfortunately, that train never reached the station. So people ask me, where did you jump off, or where did she lose my support? Well, it's very clear. She promised accountability. She promised transparency. She promised truth on the issues that tens of thousands of Albertans were dealing with and had dealt with on a personal level. The hurt, the pain, the suffering. And I'll never stop talking about that hurt, that pain, and that suffering. And the reason why is because it's still happening in today's Alberta. It's not gone. So it wasn't even a particular decision at a particular time. It was something that I seen happen very quickly. Very quickly, the desire to follow through on those commitments and those promises were gone. We're not going to talk about it. Now, there's a grace period, right? You got to give the government, you got to give a leader the time to get their feet underneath them, to become acquainted. I think Smith jumped in to some degree. She had previous legislative experience. But if there was a moment of time, if there was a time where I realized that things were not transpiring the way that we thought they would have, that the UCP members, that the Albertans and the supporters of Smith were expecting, it was a comment, and it was a very clear comment that was made to me by one of her people, who is still part of her team, who are still in the Premier's office. And I've said, some of you may know this comment, may know it's coming, but it was very clear to me that things were not well in Edmonton, and that the promises and the commitments that were made to us were forgotten or conveniently shuffled to the side. And it's I've got to think about this comment, but it went like this, and it was part of a bigger conversation, but it was a conversation where I was expressing concern, and this is what I got to hear, and it was, Marco, what gets you to the top doesn't keep you at the top. Now, that interpretation, David chuckles. David knows exactly who said it and how he said it. He's probably heard it a few times himself. That was very clear to me, that things had changed, that they were now at the top, and how they got to the top wasn't the government, the style of government that they were going to run, or that they were going to implement. So, it's been a bit of a learning curve. It's been a bit of a, at times, denial, frustration, anger, you name it. But the way I see it is, they made commitments. This government, this leader, her team, they promised Albertans accountability. But we have not seen that accountability yet. Every panelist has talked about this accountability. Dr. Mackes has talked about it in relation to the ministry and the massive legitimate mafia in this province that has caused the most pain, hurt, suffering we've ever seen. And that's why I can no longer support Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, that was a fulsome answer. So, David Parker, you're probably no stranger to being on stages like this, and you were a voice in the wilderness for some time, leading the charge against the mandates and COVID lockdowns during Jason Kenney's tenure. And I know that you played a pivotal role in getting him elected. And there was a point in time where you were probably one of his most ardent supporters. Now I'm curious, you've also been a strong advocate for Danielle Smith, and you were quite involved in her leadership campaign, as was I. And how do you respond to those who feel that she's the only viable option, there's no one else to lead up on? How do you feel about that kind of commentary? And in particular, when the comparisons are made, well, if not Danielle, then you're voting for Nenshi, or then who? Or you're voting for Nenshi. We've heard that a lot over the last several months. I personally attended over 6 town halls, and it comes up at each one. And after the second one, I started to think, well, maybe this is a bit of a deflection from answering the tough questions. When someone tells me that if I'm the only choice, then I'm starting to wonder, why are you wanting to answer the question? So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just massively disappointed, is really what it comes down to. And it's not actually so much with Danielle, it's with the people of Alberta. Because I did 300 meetings. I spoke from 300 different stages, and multiple times, we're talking probably at least 50% of the time, I got asked, why do you support Danielle Smith? Right? There were people who hated Danielle Smith in the crowd. And every single time I said, nobody is coming to save you. No leader can fix the problems that you're facing. Not a single one. Every single time I said that, and I said, if Danielle Smith doesn't do what she promises to do, we do to her what we did to Jason Kenney. That's what I said.
Exactly.
And every single one of those town halls, and I think it's being a little bit misconstrued, to be honest, to say that I supported her. Was she my friend? Absolutely, and that's the worst part of this. She was at my wedding. I really cared about this woman, and not only that, she convinced me, she lied to me. On so many levels, and I'm gonna share a couple of those, maybe later. But the part that I'm most disappointed in is that the moment that they get a leader that will give them a little bit of attention, and there are many members of the board, Peter knows this, that are immediately, they fall in love. And I don't mean in a romantic sense, I just mean they fall in love with her. The premier calls you. The premier texts you. You're important. And as soon as they got involved in politics, the lust for power took over their lives. That is what has happened to a large part of the UCP board, unfortunately. That is what has happened to a large number of TBA activists who suddenly, when they went in a room with Danielle, they get a big hug and a smile. people have fallen in love with the ring of power. And the worst mistake that I made, and this is a mistake that I've reflected on for the last 6 months as I toured the United States with Tucker and watched one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, which is the American people rising up. And I want to tell you this right now, Trump is going to be the next president of the United States of America.
Yes.
It's happening, it's done. And a lot of people say that cheating, it's now to the point where the cheating isn't enough. They cannot cheat enough to win. He's leading in every single swing state. The pre-voting numbers, he's leading in Nevada, which was supposed to be her strongest state. I could go on and on about this, I'm not going to because I know. But I just want to be very clear on this. I failed you guys by not realizing that it is human nature to immediately want to be close to power. So I failed you in the vetting of the board members and the people that I endorsed because I believed in them, because I met them and they were regular citizens, good people. Only one of them is here today. In fact, I have it on very good authority that apparently Marco Cam and I are the unholy trinity because we're here. It's from the president of the board that I endorsed who would not have won if I did not endorse him. But I have good news. Cam and I went through exactly the same thing. Cam and I are very similar people. He was homeschooled, I was homeschooled. We both got into politics way too young. We both became obsessed with power.
And it's not true.
But now we both hate politicians.
I'm just a full-time diaper
You
changer.
should, but this is what I'll just finish. So the answer is, I wasn't promoting Danielle Smith. I liked her. She was my friend. She promised to do the things that I wanted done. But I was hoping or trying and failed, obviously. And I'm gonna have to. There's a line from a Rudyard Kipling poem that goes, "If you could bear to see the things you gave your life to broken, and bend and build them up again with worn out tools." And my answer to your question is, I don't support Danielle Smith. I don't support politicians. I want you all to realize that if we don't take away the centralization of power, there's no hope for your future. That's what you need to know. There is no leader that can save you.
Thank you. Nadine, you talk a lot about principles and policies. And in 60 seconds or less, what does it mean to be a conservative?
I'm the only woman on a panel. I need more 60 seconds. Before I answer that question, I got a question for all of you. Who's the best person to make the decision about your family's health? Who's the best person to make the decision about your children's education? Congratulations, you're conservatives. So here's the thing, conservatism, and I wanted to write these points down, I'm glad I did because these guys have all stole them all. Individual liberty, freedom, limited government, personal responsibility. That's a huge one. That's the one that most people don't want to acknowledge, but it's critical to being a conservative. We, as conservatives, assert the fact that we, not government, are in the best position to affect the well-being of our family and ourselves. Right? That's a big difference between a socialist and a conservative. A socialist wants a big government to tell them what to do, because they want to avert personal responsibility. That's not what it is to be a conservative. Government's primary role, and Roger spoke on this a little bit tonight, is to actually protect your God-given rights. Because anything the government grants to you is something the government can take away. So we do have to get back to our legal system when it was founded and established on the supremacy of God. And that's what it means to be conservative. We have a moral code that we answer to that is higher than any man. It's a philosophy. And because we have a moral code, we can place trust in people. We can place trust in ourselves. as free individuals working within a framework, a rule of law that applies to every individual equally, not to special intergroups, one more than another. This is what has created the most free, the most prosperous, and the strongest economies, the strongest societies like Canada and the United States. It recognizes, to David's point, human limitations. Power corrupts, which is why we never hand our power over to an individual or a small group of individuals. That's why, as conservatives, we like the free market, because there's checks and balances in there. Rather than pursue the utopian ideal that often ignores reality, conservatives like to preserve what works, what I used to call, when I was in industry, best practices. Yep. Right? Progressives are always chasing the next best thing. It's a social experiment. Without conservatives, we'd be off the cliff by now, and we're happily moving that way as it is. So for me, to be conservative is to embrace freedom. It's to embrace that we make the best decisions for ourselves, and we don't want to be controlled. In fact, we just rather the government get out of our way.
Marty, how do you respond to the commentary that there is no one left to lead Alberta, that we're leaderless, that we somehow can't organize our own future going forward? How do you respond to that? I've seen people respond to some of your tweets this way and tell you that there's nobody that can lead this province.
Well, one of the things I do, when you get into topics that can get somewhat emotional, is you try to make them subjective instead of objective. So you bring up facts, right? And to some of those people, I often I bring it back like Marco did. Bring it back to a year and a half ago when we were in this situation and we were disappointed with Kenny. And everybody said, well, there's nobody else, it's gotta be Kenny. If we don't re-elect Kenny, then you're just giving it to, at that time, you're giving it to Notley. And so I meet a lot of people who give me that the commentary you said, there's nobody else. I'm like, well, you probably thought that way 2 years ago, but look at what happened. Kenny stepped down, we had a review, and Danielle stepped up. And you're defending Danielle, so obviously there is a person after Kenny. So by the same analysis, no matter what, there is a person after Danielle. I mean, we're a province of 4.5 million people. So
I think she added 200,000.
Yeah. There's probably that's the point. I mean, and Nadine talked about it. I mean, we're trying to you can't fall in love with a politician, and that's one of the things that I'm finding weird right now. Maybe my analytical brain as an engineer thinks too linear. To me, if I implement a solution, I'm trying to make a car go faster, and I do a change, and I only do one change, by the way, because if I make 2 or 3 changes while I'm trying to make the car go faster, and it goes faster, I don't know what worked. So I make one change, and if it doesn't work, I have absolutely no problem reversing that and making another change. So I approach politics that way. I approach leadership that way, and that's what I tell people, And I tell them this other thing too, this one other weird little thing. Albertans are known in the rest of Canada. People say, wow, you guys are tough on your leaders. I'm like, that's good. I'm fine with that. I mean, if by you telling me that, you're telling me you're weak on your leaders or you're not tough.
Isn't having low expectations part of why we ended up in the COVID mess to begin with?
Absolutely. And then to those same people who say, well, you're tough on your leaders and it must be damaging. I'm like, I don't know. Statistically, Alberta is still the economic powerhouse of the country. I mean, whatever we're doing, people say, well, you're hurting yourselves. I'm like, it's not in the stats. I'll challenge the people of New Brunswick, whatever you guys are doing, stop doing that and do something else, because that's the case. Yeah. I'll end it on that, but I wanted to just, I did want to make one quick comment to Nadine also, on the question of what is conservative. I've taken a lot of flack lately, again, on the immigration issue, and saying to people, like, stay out of Alberta, okay? Like, stay out of Alberta. And then I always get this comment, from followers, I'm from Ontario and I'm a conservative. I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with people who've come to Alberta claiming to be conservative, and they learn the hard lesson quickly. And it's amazing to watch them flip. And then I get to go, see, you're not a conservative. Because you just mentioned, like, you're upset that you have to plow your own driveway, or you're upset that you have to pay for your kids to go to take the bus to school and stuff like that. Well, that's what small government independence means. And when faced with real conservative values, most people cave.
They find out that Doug Ford probably would get elected in Alberta.
Oh, let's not go there.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Peter, in your view, what are the most significant threats facing the United Conservative Party, its conservative voter base, and UCP members? What are the most significant threats currently facing us?
That's a good one. But I don't want, I'm sorry, I've been listening to everybody here. I'm here because I wanted to make it very clear, I do want to see some changes. I'm not here to say we need to replace Danielle. I'm not afraid to have her replaced. I want to be realistic about that. Because you saw the sign up there. This is accountability. What I'm looking for, and first I'll back up to David's statement. We have a board of responsible people. The UCP board, they are passionate board members, every one of them. And they're passionate about the party. Some of them have a different approach to it. They are very close to the leader. Not all of them. We have our discussions. And their concern, as we all have, is this fear of change. If we change Danielle for somebody else, who would that be? I'm not afraid of that change if that is the accountability we need to go through. My position is, I'd like to see the needle moved a bit. There's certain things we need. We have a fear of all sorts of unknown things. I'd just like to get rid of that fear. Fiscal responsibility, I think, as it's talked about a goal, if we just did that, we'd go a long way.
Thank you for that, Peter. Next up, David, starting a grassroots movement like TVA, especially during the height of COVID, you faced a lot of opposition, particularly from the government that you were criticizing at the time, the Jason government. Have you faced that level of opposition under the Danielle Smith government? If so, what did that look like? And was your organization, I guess, welcomed as a continuation of accountability that you called for during COVID to the Jason Kenney government? How has that been perceived by the current government?
Oh, it's worse. I'm under investigation. I was just informed recently, and maybe some more will be revealed about this tonight, but that lawyers were approached to push the Alberta investigation by the Premier's office. So Danielle Smith's Premier's office has been pushing the Elections Alberta investigation against me for telling you guys how your democracy works. I currently have, and if anyone wants to see it, just message me or email me, try to get a hold of me. I currently have in my possession a 380-page document of an investigation claiming that I violated the Election Act 20 times by running Take Back Alberta. Examples of these violations. The t-shirts were the same color as the UCP. Another example of violation. I did not report that I spent money on a Zoom account, which costs about $100 a month. and therefore I was not claiming political advertising. Apparently my Jordan Peterson event was a election advertising by interviewing him on stage and having him speak. They're gloating in the Premier's office about putting me in prison, saying that I'm going to go to prison because I won't give over the donors' names. The court ordered that I had to give over the donor's name. I got a written affidavit from them saying that they would not publish that because they don't want any of you to be harassed. And I handed it over because, frankly, I'm not going to jail for you. That's what I decided after I saw how the people of Alberta treated me after Danielle Smith was elected. I said no. So I found out that the Elections Alberta investigation was prompted and pushed by the Premier's office. But not only that, the Premier's office approached me, and I have all of the evidence for this, the receipts are available, approached me in the spring of 2020, in the summer of 2023, and offered to make sure I got a job at a college for $120,000 a year if I would shelve Take Back Alberta. This was in the lead up to the annual general meeting when Danielle Smith, you may recall, was running a different slate for the board. She had a different president that she endorsed, other than the one that won. And they proceeded to basically, now the Premier has got up in front of the media and said that I need mental health help. There was another Premier, of course, that said that, right? So the truth of the matter is that I'm treated worse by the woman that I opened the door for, we'll call it, allowed to have an opportunity to become Premier, recruited most of her team, built the infrastructure that she used to become Premier.
So sorry, I gotta interrupt you,
Yeah.
David. I'm still trying to process what you just said. Jason Kenney never offered you a job to go away?
Oh, in fact, Jason Kenney was really mean, to be honest. He literally just ignored me after I...
Okay, so Jason Kenney just said, you know, fringe minority.
Well, he called me a lunatic too. So now I have the honor, I think maybe the exclusive honor, of being the only person in Alberta who 2 premiers have publicly got in front of the media and said was lunatic. So that's all.
So under the Smith government, you were offered a $120,000 a year job.
Oh, and I can tell you guys what my response was. I couldn't even pay the interest on the loans I took out to run TBA for that.
So they were wanting you to stop a grassroots movement that was born out of accountability. That's what you're telling us.
100%.
That's shocking.
Well, whether it's shocking or not, I mean, I'm not really shocked by Danielle anymore, but I'll add one more thing, and then I'm sure there's other people who want to talk. I don't want to monopolize time, but I want to explain myself because hundreds of people in this province are sending me hate mail, telling me that I'm evil. There's posts about me all over the place claiming that I am a lunatic because, you know, the Premier said it. I just want to be very clear on why I'm here tonight. It's not because of what she did to me. I wouldn't be here. I don't care. I have all kinds of things I can be doing. I just spent 6 months traveling all over America with the #1 podcaster in the world, right? And I wasn't doing it as like a staffer. I was involved in that, and very proud to have been involved in that. I don't need the Premier to make money. Like I said, she can't afford my interest payments. Apparently she got $120,000 was enough to make me forfeit all my principles. And I'm honestly not here to criticize her. I'm here to say, if you worship politicians, and this is for the people watching more than you, I know you guys are here, but if you worship them, if you say they're the only ones, if the power that they have and that you feel when you're close to them is what you want from politicians, then you will only end in tyranny. And they are trying to silence me. It isn't just them. People on this stage are trying to silence me.
Well, let me get involved here, David.
But I won't be silent. And I'm going to continue to speak what I think to be the truth as closely as I possibly can. And if I'm the only one doing it, God wills it.
Okay, moving on, Marco, without getting personal, I don't want to get between you guys right now. Without getting personal, it's, you know, some of the panel members here have had their differences. All conservatives, it seems to be a common theme in conservative politics, we hold ourselves to higher standards than each other, and sometimes it ends in a family feud. But why do you think it's essential for us, despite being diverse organizations and individuals, to unite in support of conservative ideas?
Well, I just want to mention a few things. David's not wrong. You know, the things we've called each other are probably not things we can repeat in this building. So there's been times where there's no love lost between the two of us, but this is way bigger than either of us. So there's that. I also want to quickly mention something in relation to some things David